Forgiveness is like a parachute. It doesn't work if it's not opened at the right time and place. Hello again, lovely internet people. I'm HR, and I've finally got another video for you. Welcome or welcome back to my channel, where we talk about stuff and things. Today, I want to talk about the important topic of forgiveness. I'm first going to talk about forgiveness in a general manner, and then in a religious context. As a reminder, my views and opinions are just that, my own ideas and perspectives. I live in America, so my ideas do not represent a worldwide view, and I don't speak for all atheists. Christianity dominates my little corner of the world, so I'm most familiar with it, and thus it's the religion I focus on. As usual, I'll play a video replay of my art while discussing today's topic for your enjoyment and to keep the comment trolls well fed. I want to preface today's topic with a content warning for mentions and allusions to various forms of abuse, hell, human sacrifice, trauma, and other not good things. If mentions of these kinds of difficult topics aren't for you today, please click off this video and find some good happy fun time videos for ear bleach. Thanks for stopping by, and maybe I'll see you in the next one. For everyone that's staying, let's get into it. Turn the other cheek. Forgiveness is next to godliness. To err is human, but to forgive is divine. I could probably compile a list of several hundred idioms that espouse how good it is to forgive. Forgiveness, we're often told, is noble and admirable. We're told if we don't forgive someone, the person we're hurting is ourselves. I don't buy it. Forgiveness is complex and personal, and in my humble opinion, not always appropriate. My definition for forgiveness is making an intentional decision to let go of resentment and anger. But guess what? Sometimes anger is completely justified, and repressing those feelings can cause more harm than good. When someone is actively or severely hurting you, when someone has repeatedly harmed and abused you, forgiveness might not be the best option. The message that the abuser might receive is that their behavior is acceptable and they have no need to take accountability nor make any efforts to change. If forgiveness comes at the expense of your well-being, then it isn't the wonderful thing we've been told over and over again that it is. Contrary to popular advice, it is possible and sometimes more beneficial to focus on healing and moving forward without forgiving the offender. Forcing forgiveness can lead to more resentment and anger and feeling betrayed. If forgiveness means actively ignoring your own values and beliefs, again, it might not be the best way to go. If someone commits a hate crime and constantly espouses prejudiced views, I have no obligation to forgive them. If and when they show remorse and take steps to make amends, I reserve the right to reconsider forgiveness, but when they are actively causing harm, it's more important to stand up for what you believe in and take a firm stance against the offending behaviors. Forgiveness can indeed be a powerful tool for healing and moving on from difficult situations, but some circumstances warrant anger. Forgiveness is a personal decision, and it isn't always the magical band-aid that many seem to think it is. Now that we have some generalities out of the way, let's talk about the most magical forgiveness band-aid story ever invented. The story of how Jesus supposedly died so that we could be forgiven for our, quote, sins. This next part might sound somewhat familiar because I went on a little rant about forgiveness in a previous video called Give God His Credit. This essay stemmed from that rant because I realized I had more to say. So let's talk again about the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. For just a moment, putting aside the message that we are all awful, dirty sinners deserving of punishment just for existing, and skipping discussions of the Trinity aspect, which would imply that God took a fraction of a second out of his eternity to get himself sacrificed to himself to appease himself, just setting all of that aside for now. The whole concept of Jesus' brutal torture, suffering, and execution to somehow atone for the sins of others may actually be one of the most immoral parts of the Bible. Redemption by proxy is unjust and it makes no sense. Yet the theological concept of substitutionary atonement is central to many Christian denominations. Many believe that Jesus died on the cross so humanity could be granted forgiveness of their sins. In many Christian denominations, your salvation is dependent on believing in and accepting the sacrifice. And if you don't accept it, the so-called holy men say that you can't be forgiven. And for this, you deserve an eternity in hell. Jesus, if he existed, was executed because of his own actions and the beliefs of the society he lived in, not for the actions of generations past, and certainly not for actions done today. Assuming that all humans are responsible for the sins of their ancestors is a ridiculous and deeply problematic concept that is based on the idea of guilt by association, I guess. Humans are indeed flawed, but the idea that we need someone to be brutally killed in order to be forgiven for our flaws is absurd. A quick aside on the idea of original sin, the concept that we are all born bad and in need of saving through Jesus' blood has been a central concept in Christian theology for centuries. But guess what? It may not be biblically supported. It's a theological construct developed by theologians and church fathers. In Genesis 3, where Adam and Eve disobey God by eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, it doesn't suggest that all humans are born sinful. Adam and Eve get an immediate consequence for their disobedience, even though one could argue that they literally didn't know any better and maybe God should practice that forgiveness thing, but I digress. The Old Testament does describe the sinfulness of humanity, but it does not suggest that all humans are born sinful. The New Testament likewise does not explicitly teach the concept of original sin. Some passages again suggest that humans are sinful and in need of salvation, but they don't suggest that we are born sinful. Jesus himself emphasized the importance of love, compassion, and forgiveness, but also did not teach that all humans are born sinful. So yeah, the concept of original sin is not explicitly biblically supported and is not consistent with Christ's teachings. Church leaders made it up. Now back to our regularly scheduled programming. Have you ever forgiven someone? Did you require someone to be sacrificed before you did it? Humans forgive each other daily, and they don't need anyone to die before doing so. So why does a supposedly benevolent God require a blood sacrifice to grant forgiveness? The idea of blood sacrifice is a primitive and barbaric concept that has no place in modern life. The idea that God requires a blood sacrifice is cruel and unnecessary. Violence and punishments aren't necessary to achieve forgiveness. It really seems like God needs to learn about forgiveness, because his supposed need for punishment and sacrifice to appease his anger is cruel and vindictive. The idea of substitutionary atonement was the best that an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-supposedly good God could do. Unjust punishment, blood sacrifice, guilt by association, divine retribution. These are the acts of a moral source of all good? What? Let's consider another aspect of forgiveness as it is frequently presented in many devout religious families and communities. It goes something like this. You have to forgive your abuser because Jesus already forgave them. Substitutionary atonement isn't just about the person who has done something wrong. It robs victims of agency because it includes the idea that someone else has already paid for the crime committed against them. Substitutionary atonement goes against the basic principles of justice. The wrongdoer should be held accountable for their actions, and victims should not be forced to forgive them if they don't want to, because some people think a book says they should. I don't consider Jesus' sacrifice a gift. I don't accept this as a beautiful thing that the Christians try to frame it as. I don't believe that it's okay to punish someone for the sins of their ancestors. I don't believe in sin. I don't believe it's okay to punish anyone other than the perpetrators. I don't believe that a prerequisite of forgiveness is a blood sacrifice. Substitutionary atonement is a harmful and damaging belief that should be rejected in favor of more modern and enlightened theological concepts. As I said previously, forgiveness can be a good thing, but it isn't always a good thing. I find many religious ideas surrounding forgiveness to be lacking, especially the ideas of substitutionary atonement, original sin, and forcing forgiveness on victims. I find the existence of the Christian God to be about as likely as finding a unicorn riding a tricycle on Mars. But if he were real, the suffering he's inflicted on so many and the systems he supposedly designed that cause such pain and misery, a torturous villain such as he would be unforgivable in my opinion. Thank you for watching today. Please like the video if you like the video. Subscribe if you'd like to see more, even though there isn't a specific schedule for these types of videos yet. Please be respectful to others in the comments. Debate is great, but let's stay out of debasement. I've got a website, renewedviews.com, Patreon. I also stream on Twitch if you want to see even more stuff and things. If you like the music, check out Mikey's SoundCloud. It's linked in the description. Thanks again for watching, and maybe you'll see me in the next one.